So do badders. Welcome to Bad Boy Running. Our next guest actually is courtesy of the running show, who is coming up shortly. So get your tickets if you haven't already. But we've been talking quite a lot about, we've always wondered what to do with old trainers, old medals, old shirts. We spoke to Damo a few weeks ago about how he's viewing being a responsible runner. And then I saw an email about Tony and how the fact he could recycle trainers, which I didn't think was possible. So I've done no other research other than that. I don't know how he does it, what he does, if it's magic, if it's marketing, so I've got him on to explain it all. So hopefully it's all good news. So welcome to the podcast, the wonderful Piedade. Oh no, did I get it wrong?
You got it right. Perfect.
I got it right. Yes.
Well done. It's the first challenge over and done with.
It was too long since you told me, to the point I said it again.
You lost faith as you were saying it.
And you know, I've had it all. I've had Piedade, Piedade, Piedale. It's great, but it's Piedade. Thank you.
Piedade.
I thought it might have been some like clever YouTube name where it was like PA for foot and daddy, like I'm the foot daddy type thing. I thought it was some like clever thing going on there.
I love it. No, but there's no magic in it. It's originally I'm Portuguese. The Piedade translates to mercy, which I think is so much better. But I don't really think I'm going to change my name.
Yeah, and did it present any issues at school, or did you go under the radar?
Yeah, how long you got? I came to the UK. I was 8 years old. My parents moved over. I started school with a name like Antonio Piedade in North London, Harlesden. Started school and with only being able to count to 10. It was brilliant. Yeah, great growing up.
So you were unintelligent and you had a bad name.
I mean,
the combination. I mean, that's tough.
It's like that song, isn't it? A boy named Sue.
I take it you can only count to 10 in English, is what you meant. That you could count to 10 in other languages.
Well, where did your connect? Because you've got well, I was going to say fingers in many pies, but that would be feeding into the name. Sorry, but yeah, I mean where did your link to running began? Because you're CEO of Jogging Buddy and JogOnAgain, and when did it all start?
Yeah, I was. I mean, like most kids, when you're young, you sort of go into leisure centres. I was a lifeguard and did all that kind of stuff. And really, up until my early teens, I wasn't particularly active. And then I discovered that actually being a lifeguard wasn't for me, but the guys in the gym looked like they were having quite a lot of fun, and qualified as a fitness instructor. Decided that actually I was very small framed. I was 9.5 stone until I was about the age of 24. So I was always like really quite thin.
Yeah.
And I figured no matter how many weights I push, I can't put on weight either. So I decided to try sort of running and being a bit more cardiovascularly fit. And I decided at that point it was obvious that actually I could run a bit. I haven't been able to get back to that form ever since, but that's when I really fell in love with running and actually knowing that I could run for 3-4 hours and actually still be okay. But I guess much to do with the benefit of being young and stupid as opposed to being fit, I guess.
And when did you? Because it's always interesting to understand. Obviously, we've got 105 common connections on LinkedIn. My God, it's always interesting to understand how people can transition from running being a hobby to a passion to almost full time. I mean, what's that journey been for you?
Like most things, I think anything that has been kind of long lasting, successful, it's been really by accident. I mean, I've joked, when I'm like in my 80s, I'm going to write this management book that says, I had this amazing strategy and it was all part of a big plan. And actually, it never has been. It all started really from what makes sense to do that actually helps people. And for me, you mentioned Jogging Buddy. I launched Jogging Buddy in 2009. I was working in London. I had a horrible job, a horrible boss, working in the city. I was overweight, smoking 40 a day. And at 3 a.m, I decided that was it. I'm going to go out and run, and I decided to go running at 3 a.m. because quite frankly, I didn't like the way I looked when I ran. And anyway, so I went out running, and I found on my road people running at 3 a.m, right? And I was like, do you know, it would have been great to know that these people were out running, because right then I really needed that help. And the idea of jogging buddy happened on that run. The fact that I needed a buddy to get me through and get me to the next stage. And anyway, I finished my run, and I said to myself, you know what, if the URL, and guys, you know how hard it is to find the right URL.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, if joggingbuddy.com is available, I'm going to do this. And I got home. First thing I did is I got on a computer, and joggingbuddy.com was available. Within sort of 3 weeks, I had a very, rudimentary kind of, website going. But I made one mistake, and I didn't say, unless you're in North London, don't bother signing up. And we're now in 126 countries. So it was absolutely non-intentional, but it shows, I guess, from my perspective, that there is this innate human element to running. You can get tech all you like, and tech's very good at recording when you go out and when you decide to go out. But does it actually get you out the door, or is it when you and David make a decision to go on a Wednesday at 2:00, and no matter, come what may, you go for a run? And I thought that that's where the secret was, in that kind of contract between people.
Because back in, I guess, 2009, 2008, I'm trying to, did Strava exist in the UK at that stage? It would have been close, right?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know, because I never really paid attention to what was going on then. I was worried about me. It was a very selfish project, right? I need some buddies, and how am I going to get buddies? But I think in those days, Strava was very early and predominantly really about athletes and data. So this is for people who knew what, running a, BPM meant. But forget 2009 was a long time ago.
Yeah, I guess it's more message boards. Facebook's maybe 2 years old at that stage. So groups haven't really taken off at all, actually. Probably didn't exist.
Yeah.
Probably, what was it? Runners World Forum, I'd imagine, would have been the main way of communicating.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was it, wasn't it? That's how you found stuff or connected with people, or yeah.
And how, because I'm going through now almost a less obvious time for knowing who I'm going to run with, what I'm running, and when I'm running, and because I've kind of fallen out of sync with a running club or with training plans, or and I'm at the stage where I'm like, when it comes to Sunday runs, I'm like, well, should I try and run with someone? Should I not? Can I be bothered to coordinate? When people typically kind of first came to your site, like, would they be a similar position to me? Or were they people who'd moved into a new area, or the people new to running, or did you have a sense of where the need was most?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, and I don't have lots of deep data, but there are some real nuggets that I found by talking to people. One is that there are a lot of people on the site that effectively run on their own. And I'm like, why are you here? Right. So I've called a couple up, and I said, look, listen, talk to me. And they said, look,
Tony, just called them up. Why are you here?
Get off my side. You just don't understand the concept.
But it's brilliant. And you'll notice as a runner, we're quite giving in our time, right? If somebody on that Sunday called you up, David, and said, hey, listen, I'm really struggling, you would not say no. And that's what a lot of people on the site saying, I don't need a buddy, Tony, but I want to be on the site in case somebody needs me.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And I was like, aha, it was an aha moment, right? Because, I mean, it's the old thing about running clubs. Nobody wants to go and join a running club because they don't feel that they're fit enough. Running clubs are there to get you fit. So, this is much the same, where you don't really want a buddy, but you might just. But you're also very willing to respond should somebody contact you.
And so do you typically, like, how? Because on dating, you'd look at a picture, you'd see a profile, a description of you know, what pizzas they like, what their favorite film is, that kind of
This
crap.
is an insight that you didn't want. Right, go on, continue, David.
Well, how do you what kind of classifications are people looking for when they're actually reaching out? Because there's this huge difference in the distances, the types, the times, the speeds, the nature of the sessions,
The type of chat.
Type of chat.
Yeah.
But how have you found is the best way to actually match people?
Well, for us, you know, the site itself does quite a lot of the hard work, right? And it is not automated in the way that you would expect Strava is. We don't have that kind of, you know, deep pockets to make it work that way. So it's all about the user having the ability to search in under their own criteria. We know, really, as I know as a user, the best things, the most important thing is, do I want to run with a male or female? How old are they? I want to have something in common with them. And what kind of pace do they run at? Okay, those are predominantly the most, you know, and how close to me are they, right? So everything is sort of postcode based. So we've got all those elements already in place, and there's some nifty bits in there. So, for example, if David, you're going to do an event, Jody, you're going to do the same event. You live 5 miles away from each other, but you've never met. Is what we call an event CV. So you go in and fill it in. The system will say, "Hey, David, meet Jody. You're both doing the New York Marathon next year. Why don't you train together?" And this came about because I've done a New York Marathon twice, and on 2 occasions, I towed the start line, with somebody that was less than 5 miles away from where I was living in the UK. Didn't know them. I didn't train with them. I didn't travel with them. We didn't, you know, there's so many cost savings in that journey that we could have done together. That would have been marvelous, but none of that happened.
Were they faster than you though in the end?
Yeah,
that was the thing. Well, then maybe they didn't want. Maybe they did know you.
They
knew,
you
didn't know them. Maybe
they all just ran the next corner.
Yeah, they were just the whole thing was a ruse. That you mentioned there something about, you know, it's like a running club, but you know, people want to get fit and go to a running club. Do you think partly the success of it is to do with the failure of running clubs to bring people in a kind of a more inclusive way?
I don't know. Look, I love running clubs, and I've always approached them and said, listen, why don't you get your running club onto Jogging Buddy? Because you train once a week. Well, what do they do during the other days? It's a bit like part run. I've often said to the guys there, listen, you have this amazing, you know, point in the calendar every week where people can train together using Jogging Buddy and then turn up and see how they're getting on. So I don't think we compete, but I think where both part run and the running clubs have sort of lost their way a little bit is they're fixed on a particular day and time. You know, you look at my schedule and my wife, you know, anyone with a family, we can't do some of those things. We can't make 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. We're doing a school run or getting kids to bed. So there's an informal running club opportunity where it's running regularly, but when it suits me, not necessarily always with the same person, but when it suits me. And I think there's a real opportunity in that. And I see that also when I travel. So the great thing about this accidentally not saying, you know, don't sign up unless you're in North London was, now I can say you can find someone to walk, jog and run with where you live, where you work, and when you travel. So if you're going to, you know, up north or overseas, put in your postcode of your hotel, you'll find someone on our platform to go running with.
That's nice to think.
Amazing.
Yeah, because we often use running as a way to explore when we're traveling, and it doesn't always work out because it does in a bigger city because you just run in the center, but you
don't know where you're running, do you, David, when you're in Copenhagen and other places like that?
Yeah, it does sometimes lead to circumstances less unexpected, shall we say? But would you say there's a certain nature of runs that people are looking for? Like, are people just reaching out for that initial support of almost, I want the motivation by having someone there? Or are people grouping up for the longer runs because of boredom? Are they grouping up for things like intervals because they need someone there to almost force them into the into the rhythm of it, or?
I think anecdotally, it's all of it. It's very hard to have a standard thread all the way through what motivates somebody to find a buddy. I think so. 53% of our base is female, and I think that would tell me that certainly one of them is safety. And we know there's big campaigns about changing that, but we know that that's just an inherent thing that is around. So let's not, sideline it. And I'm very proud of that number. I also know that, so jogging buddy, if you look at the demographic, is bottom of your pyramid in terms of running. Our average male runs a 12-minute mile. Our average female runs a 13-minute mile. So these are, and I count myself amongst them, plodders. So it's a great, we get them in, we walk, jog, run all the way through. So it's really that motivation, somebody who has a little bit more experience than me, who can teach me, and somebody who can keep me going. And of course, we do try, we've seen a big growth in trail running, right? And the thing about exploring trail running is, if you're new to it, there's a whole bunch of technique, but also there's a safety aspect. If you go over and you do your ankle in the middle of nowhere, it's going to be a long time to get some help if you're not prepared. So, we try and persuade people to buddy up to go and do those first experiences together.
And is it used almost as a recruitment ground now for people trying to do coaching, people trying to push their own groups and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, could be. I don't mind if it is. I guess we have the ability for members to kind of block people if it's spam or anything other than a legitimate request to go running. We don't get very much of that, but when we do, we act on it. And I don't mind. I don't mind working with personal trainers and others. It's this is there for members, and if members don't like it, they'll report it, and we'll do something about it.
Danny, he's not asking that as a means by wondering, about the ethics of it for runners and everything. He's looking at it as a marketing opportunity. It's like, is it possible to successfully launch a new flavor of a caffeine-based product through this in some way?
Suddenly runners called Mr. Bullets cropping across the globe.
Mr. Bullet.
Lots of postcodes. And look, I think, and maybe I take a very relaxed view of this. When I often talk about we, and actually it's not we, it's just me, there's no royal we. The site itself is very basic. It's there. I do very little to it. I don't do adverts on it. I don't send you emails. I don't send newsletters. It's there for users to use. And actually they've been voting with their feet and joining, and that's what we like. We're getting about 500 to 600 members per month, every month, without doing a single piece of advertising.
Oh wow,
it's just phenomenal.
So all word of mouth, or is that just connections with running clubs? And
I don't know. I people find us. I mean, I see it on Google traffic mainly through web and obviously raising it in conversations like this. But I have never had this much exposure for Jogging Buddy ever, and least of all in the UK. It's actually quite funny. I used to travel quite a bit, and every time I've gone overseas, New York, I'd phone up one of the TV stations, and I'd be interviewed in Central Park in a heartbeat, right? And we see members go up. Same in South Africa, same in Australia. In the UK, you try and knock on the door of the BBC or anyone who's got a media outlet. They're like, no, it'll be 10 grand for.
You're stuck with us.
That's it.
But this is, which is why it's been quite gradual. But you know what? I'm delighted that it's just been a gradual, organic growth, and long may it continue.
And do you get a sense of different regional variations in how many runners there are and the types of runs they do, or certain challenges facing runners in different areas?
Again, there's some clues in some of the data. In the UK, we're seeing a big growth in the older age bracket, and I'm talking sort of 50 plus. Whereas when we first started, it was early 20s. In the US, we see a lot more people self-reporting that they do trail running. So as a part of the sign-up process says, what kind of runner are you and what are you into? and we see a lot more of the trail running community coming onto that site, which is fine. We're seeing big growth, not from any particular age demographic or even gender, but from India. We've seen this just spike over the last 18 months of people joining from there, which for me, my cynical mind was always like, oh, my member's going to get scammed, just because there's an inherent sort of fear of that happening. But no, they seem to be super engaged in the site. So it's lovely to see, but there isn't any golden sort of nugget of data that says, this group has a particular interest in the running sphere.
And if you were, say, England Athletics, or if you were a running club looking to try and be more appealing, to try and actually offer more to attract members that they don't currently reach, so what would your advice be?
Well, to independent running clubs, I'd say come and talk to us, right? I'd love to work a way that they could tell people about us, and we tell people about them. Particularly, the opportunity for running clubs is also the transient population coming from London. If I've got an overseas visitor coming in, living in Guildford, puts in a GU postcode, and I could say, here's your members, and by the way, here's some list of running clubs, right? And I give them a choice. I don't have that today. England Athletics, in fact, I was in conversation with them throughout all of my journey with Jogging Buddy, and we had a number of conversations about what we could do together, but they came up with a similar program called Run Together. Don't know where they got the idea from, but it was, but theirs is slightly different in the sense that it's instructor led.
Okay.
Running.
Yeah.
So that's, there is enough space in, for everyone to coexist. I mean, you remember the running bug was around for a few years. Yeah. Great. They were competing with us for sure. They've disappeared now, I think. Run in England was another one some years back, 2010. I think they were around for about 18 months to 2 years. They've disappeared, and we're still here.
Why do you think that is, with all those other ones? Because I'm imagine that there's I think we've spoken to loads of people, haven't we, who going, we've got our new app where you search and you find other people on it and you can run with them. You've got these things coming all the time. What do you think it is specifically about what you've got that has allowed you both to survive and also fend off the competition that's coming up?
I've never put pressure on the portal to make money. I've never, not that I've never wanted to. My wife is constantly saying, this thing has been going on for some time. This is a very long hobby. But it's, I've always felt if you do the right thing by the members, then it will come good, right? In the early years, so 29, I launched it. 2010, Nike flew me out to Oregon, right, to go and meet with their 3 top investors, and I was spent the plane journey writing the list of the stuff I was going to spend, yacht, buy an island off the cost of, I got there, and they put me up for 3 or 4 days, I think it was, and they said, Tony, this Jogging Buddy, tell us about it. I said, well, it's all about running. And they said, well, doesn't matter if it's about Nike or, I said, no, the lowest common denominator is running. I don't care what brand. That was the end of my conversation.
So, what do you think what were they wanting? Just only Nike runners, or?
I think they wanted to establish who I was, and I'm not a known runner. I'm no celebrity. I've never won any races. What my ambition for the site was, and whether indeed it was something that was more leaning towards a specific brand's activity versus the community. And my heart in 2009, as is now, is really about doing the right thing. People need to increase their level of activity. They can do this in a number of ways. There's sports centres, there's running clubs, but actually sometimes all they need is something much more informal that they can control. And I think we're doing a good job in that space. We've got a lot more to do, of course, but that I've stuck to my guns with that and probably lost out along the way. But who knows? It's a long race.
A man that turned down Nike. God, you can see that. You can see
Oh,
that as a headline on the piece and everything. When this goes bigger, and all the cash starts flowing out. I love it.
I don't think I got the chance to turn them down. There wasn't
irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Like it doesn't matter. Like
You got the plane ticket. You can prove you've been
exactly.
out there.
Yeah, that's it.
So when did Jog On Again suddenly appear as an idea?
Yeah, so this is Jog On has been really quite fun. I mean, genuinely just fun and hilarious at every stage. So back in March of this year, there was an article by The Guardian, which I think was actually originally written back in 2020. So it must have recirculated and came to my attention. And it said it takes 1,000 years to degrade a pair of running shoes in landfill. And I remember vividly because we were going out for a walk with the family. My wife, I've got 2 children, and I was I'm not normally quiet, as you can probably tell. And my wife said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "No." I said, "This article is really, playing on my mind." So on one hand, I've got this platform where I'm trying to actively encourage people to go out and do more and be active. And on the other hand, we've got this problem. And I said, and I remember thinking it vividly, what that article actually means is that every pair of running shoes ever made is still on the planet.
Mm.
Right? Like, oh, that's a lot of shoes. And anyway, so I did a bit of looking around. I said, well, let me see what there is, because I've got, pairs of running shoes. What do I do with it? And there are a few sort of pockets of things, but nothing was done at the right scale. So I decided on a Wednesday to do something about it, built the website on Sunday, and told my wife on Monday that we were going to go and start collecting old running shoes and putting it in our garage.
And what was the plan once you'd got because actually
there was no plan.
Because it's not hard to actually, because when I was trying to do something with medals and I just didn't have the time to organize it, and it became apparent that we'd suddenly get thousands of them as soon as you say, look, we're recycling something. Everyone's almost relieved to be able to just get rid of that responsibility. So you didn't know what you'd do with them or what you could do with them at that stage?
There's 2 things that I think are true. One is that for runners, the cushioning on a running shoe will go way before the structure of the shoe goes. So it's defined. For me, it was a clear definition between what is a valuable piece of footwear versus a running shoe, right? So my starting assumption was there are loads of running shoes who people blame for the fact that they're 3 seconds off their time, and they've ditched it for a new one with slightly more comfort and a bit more fluffiness, and they suddenly back up to where they were. But they're still a very good shoe. I want that shoe because there are people in the world for whom that is so important. So, and I figured I banked on the fact that the actual end of life, what I call an end of life shoe, was going to be a small amount, and it's borne out. Where 3% of all the shoes we've had through my garage so far have been end of life. 3%.
Well, and what would you? Because just shows how much a cheapo I am. Because I'm the reverse, where everything's falling apart typically with toes poking out left.
Talk about shoes here, or
yeah, true. Poking. I mean, that's why I don't stand up, because poking out. But and so, do you think it is that when you look at the shoes coming in, do you think it is that much performance focused versus vanity of wanting something new versus actually they just don't look as good as I'd hoped?
Or versus like the marketing, the marketing pressure on people to get new shoes?
I think all of the above. But the one thing I think I want to be very clear about, what I'm not about is brand bashing in this space, because what I do want the brands to do is continue to make really good shoes that help people stay injury free, because we also don't want that. We don't want people to then start not being healthy, in order to stay fit over a longer period of time, right? So for me, it was more about, well, what is the behavior in the UK? We know that about 30 million pairs a year are thrown away, are gone, right? So what do we do with that? They're probably just languishing in the backs of cupboards or in somebody else's garage.
Sorry, wait a minute. 30 million?
30 million, yeah.
Pairs of shoes in the UK?
Yeah. Those are the figures that I've stumbled on.
Sounds about right.
It is a astonishing amount.
If you think how often you buy a pair, and that, I guess that's all sports as well, is it, or just running shoes?
Well, those are running shoes, and typically what I would say, running and trainers, but not fashion trainers. Yeah, so you kind of your tennis shoes, more so. But it's a horrendous amount to kind of contemplate. And I thought, well, listen.
How big's your garage?
Yeah. Well, the target I set was 1 million pairs. Let's see how we get on. Let's aim for 1 million pairs. My brother phones me up and he said, Tony, I love the website. It's brilliant. He says, but I don't understand. You're saying there's 30 million pairs and you're only asking for 1 million. I get it. Let's just start there. But think about it. If 3% of that is what is actually end of life, then there's a lot of still very good shoes out there that are desperately needed somewhere else in the world. So,
but what happens from the point that, well, firstly, how do people give you the shoes? And then what happens from that point on to the point that they're on someone else's feet?
Well, let me first of all, as a campaign, and this is what this would never have happened by just me deciding to do it. It's taken a lot of people kind of also liking the idea and wanted to get behind it. We first went to the universities because we already had relationships with some of them through Jogging Buddy. We started at Birmingham University, went to Hertfordshire. We're now in 17 universities, 216 leisure centres. We've got 3 main operators, everyone active, Places, Leisure and Parkwood, all said this is a no-brainer. Give us up those collection boxes. So there are drop-off points already throughout the UK. We work early on, we were taken on by sportshoes.com, who came along and said, love it. Says, we want very little other than when somebody buys a pair of shoes, in the receipt, we'll tell them about Jog On and encourage them to give you the old shoes. I'm like, perfect. That's the kind of exposure we needed to get going. And they did something really amazing. They brought to the table also a courier. They're called Every, used to be called Hermes.
Oh, Hermes, yeah.
Yeah. And they basically brought them to the table and they said, look, we'll put a delivery package together one way, so to my address only, so that anybody in the UK for a fixed fee of £2 can send 15 kilograms of shoes to you, which is about 40 pairs.
Wow.
Right? So that for me just means that people can send it directly to me, right? They're not paying £4 to send me one pair. They can pay £2 and they can send me what they've got plus their neighbours,
And for reference at home, Royal Mail's, I think, £4.40 for second class, 2 kilograms untracked. So that's super cheap.
I think for us again, that was life changing. I think it meant that we have a direct to kind of consumer proposition. And it can automatically accelerate, mass market. I love it because I get a package come through every single day. My postie, she was like at the beginning very excited about it. Now she sort of walks up with boxes in her arms. She's a bit less excited.
And so, but when the shoes arrive, then like what state are they in typically, and how do you then buff them up as such?
So we get a whole spectrum. I have got shoes in here still with labels on, brand new, still with the stuffing in the toes. I have had somebody clearly was sponsored by a brand I won't mention, and I had 7 pairs of size 8s, brand new with the stickers still on them, right? And then there's all along that spectrum. The worst that they get is obviously when they're falling apart, the soles are coming off, there's rips on the side. The biggest or the most difficult area to kind of fix is behind the heel, that heel pad. when it all cuts away. Once that goes, it's really hard to fix that. But I take a view very quickly that says, you know, good pair, bad pair, and that's how we sort them. All the commitment right from the beginning was that when we talk about removing shoes from landfill, we mean anyone's landfill. So we don't send them anywhere else. We take care of them in the UK. And that was a very important starting point. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a second, because we haven't yet got a proper solution for that. But I'll explain to you kind of what we're proposing to do. And then all the other ones that are good, there's a multitude of channels. We've got charities, both in the UK and overseas. We work NGOs, so anyone doing outreach programs overseas, if they want support, we can help. Support that. We work with microeconomies around the world. So these are families and communities who rely on, you know, acquiring 10 pairs of shoes to go and sell in the flea market. That's how they make their living. And that's a very important channel for us, because I can't afford to store 30 million pairs in my garage waiting for a charity to need them. So, you know,
will they buy them from you?
No, well, we supply. I mean, there's a number
people reselling.
Yeah, there are a number of places around the world. There's about 14 different hubs around the world that are already set up for trading in commodities, whether it's t-shirts and clothing and bedclothes. We distribute into some of those channels. What happens from there, that's down to them. Now, most of these organizations, when I send stuff from here, I will always ask them to pay for the postage, so that we try and stay cost neutral. So if anybody wants stuff, charities, NGOs, all they have to do is to pay for the postage out to them.
And so is it funded at all then? Because it just seems like a huge amount of work. It's
not as much as you think. You know, does it take up a lot of my time? Yes. Is it how I make my living? No. You know, I'm back to the jogging buddy scenario where I kind of think, you know,
what does your wife say? Wait a minute, we got one that's not making any money, and you've added a second. You're like, there's always room for a third.
This one in particular, I do think I need to find a way of monetizing some of it, because if I want to do this for the long term, which I do, and we want to scale, I'm going to need to have some proper premises. Right, we're going to have to be a little bit more structured to make sure that this is set up for the long term. Now, there are a number of ways of doing that. I'm sure there's some carbon offset credits somewhere that we can apply for.
Surely there's some big brand who needs to tick an ESG box somewhere that can like land a bit of budget with you or something. I'm sure that's the way to do it.
And actually, and now, you know, I've often said, if an opportunity come along, what I don't want necessarily is cash. What I want is somebody to say, you know what, take a 5-year lease on that building so that I can do this properly. This isn't the Tony retirement plan. This is actually, let's go forward. Let's make this really happen. And that would be my preferred kind of outcome. But, do you know, we've only been going since April. Right? It feels like we've been doing this for decades already, because actually there's been a humongous amount of interest. We've got a little bit of traction. You know, it took us, 3 months to do our first 1,000 pairs. It then took 2 months to do 2,000 pairs. I've just done 1,000 pairs in a week, right? So you can see the traction is coming and it's starting to build, but we're a long way off hitting 1 million pairs. So, you know, we're okay for a bit longer working out the garage, and it suits me because, you know, kids are asleep, and if I'm not talking to you guys, I'll be in there packing.
Do you have a sense that there's people doing it in other countries as well, something similar, or you know, you're already getting the call from people overseas going, oh, can you start doing it here, or can you help someone set it up here?
It's crazy, Jody, because so the first email from overseas came from Spain. I then had Germany, I had Sweden, Norway, Ireland. You know, it's kind of people saying, how do I get these shoes to you? You know, this everything doesn't seem to work in my country. Like, no, it doesn't. And they're like, So there is a draw, but we've got to do this right in the UK. You know, it's early on, and the temptation is to kind of really accelerate this too quickly. And if there was an opportunity to accelerate that, do good, and for me to drop everything else in my life that I need to be doing, then perhaps I would look at it more seriously. But right now, this is actually, I'm doing it at a pace that I can manage and that I can fit around everything else.
And so just to clarify then, so what's like specifically are you looking for? Just because, you know, you never know who's listening, but, you know, like, so, but you're looking for like, you know, warehouse space up to a certain level, and what additional, you know, support from people, or, you know, just exactly kind of what do you need in order to kind of keep taking it further?
My ideal scenario is kind of warehousing storage space that I can work out from in West Sussex, so that I don't have to travel too far. It's selfish, I know, but it needs to be a convenient spot, and in the place where I can get volunteers to come and work from, because it's quite difficult. Or I'm not short of offers, but to get people to come work from your house, you don't necessarily want to give them the keys and say, you know, open the garage and off you go. But again, you know, it's a journey. We'll get there. We're not desperate for it. I'm not stopping stuff from arriving here because you know, we can't do anything with it. We're working. All that's happening now is unpacking a bit quicker.
And with you mentioned they are putting big containers in universities and things. How are they delivered? How are they?
Yeah, so it's basically, the universities have these sort of 6-foot bins, collection bins, with a, you know, hole at the top says donation, donate here, put your shoes in, which has been brilliant. And actually, they put them out in the receptions. They collect them from the students and the faculty. At the end of whenever they're full, they take them out, put them in a box, and send them to me using the Every postage deal.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. And with I mean, if you think that Music Magpie can make money off reselling CDs, you'd think amongst the shoes you're getting, there must be a level of shoe that you could fund it with by selling on eBay for, you know, half price or a third of the price, particularly if you're getting some new ones. But even if not, there's got to be some quality in there as well, you'd think.
There is. I think the only thing I don't want to do is alienate my partners. You know, I've got retail stores, I've got online stores. You know, I don't want the short-term return of an eBay, you know, operation. You know, there are people who would quite happily take, even charities, right? And I'm very fussy about charities that I work with. I will work with charities who have an end user, not charities who want our products so they can sell it on eBay and take the cash, because that defeats the whole purpose a little bit for me. And really, it's going to be peanuts by the time I kind of look at effort of trying to get all these things done. I would rather take those great quality shoes and okay shoes, mix them all up in a box, and whoever gets them is going to get, you know, a combination of really good stuff, you know, or usable stuff. So I'm content with that as a process for now.
And do you get a sense that there are design flaws in trainers? Are you seeing some issues more than others?
Not really. I think I see a very good spread of the brands. It's really interesting because there's always a view in your mind when you first start on this journey. You think, oh, I'm going to be inundated with, you know, particular brand. It's not that at all. You know, it's very constant. All the brands, the same problems seem to happen in the same place. It seems to be more toe related than anything else. I think some of particularly the hardier sort of trail running shoes stand up to that a bit better. And that's, you know, that's just because of the construction. But of course, you get less of the waterproofing, but less of the heat evaporation, right, from those. But I'm no expert. All I see when they come in, and they come in all kinds of standards and dirt, is, do they have holes and do they have good soles? If they have a good sole in them, the holes can be patched up very easily. So it's Sorry, my screen just did something funny. I thought you guys disappeared.
And how do you patch up if they're wanting, and I'm thinking myself actually, if they're wanting to patch their own ones, because I've done some tape which kind of Dan Lawson has recommended. It's not worked on some of them, but is there good material, specific material or technique to actually saving shoes?
So the answer is I don't know, because I don't do the patching up here. I just don't have the time to go and do that. There are people who are experts at doing this, and my job has been to try and find where those groups of people are and try and work out where they're working with them to say, okay, what standard of shoe do we need to have, or how bad can they be before you say you can't do anything with them, and establish what that benchmark is, and then supply them so that they can have at least an opportunity of mending them and putting them to some good use.
And do you get a sense that, say this goes really well and we are getting 5-10 million a year coming through and it's replicated in other countries, do you think we'll ever reach a point where the demand for running shoes or trainers globally isn't enough for the amount that the West buy and then get rid of?
I don't know. I've never imagined that scenario, because I know that would be an amazing achievement, but it would be incredibly difficult to achieve at the same time. I think there is always an appetite to evolve product. You're never going to stop product evolving, materials evolving, and people's buying habits changing. What I do know is that today, in 2022, there are 3 million people with foot disease because they don't have shoes. That's in 2022, right? If we can try, and I can't target that because I don't know exactly where they are. I don't. But if in the theory is that we've got good shoes somewhere and people who want them somewhere else, can we make that transition? Now, I don't really mind if that is through a flea market that sells them at $2 or $1 or whatever. I don't mind if that's a charity that support. There's got to be a way of moving them from A to B. Now, I can imagine those markets aren't very attractive for the big brands, and that's fine. But this is a secondary market that's got some value, I would imagine, and I think we can try and address some of that.
And have you had any brands feedback, like the trainer manufacturers themselves? Do they sound nervous about trying recycling more and getting shoes more life out of them and getting them back in the system?
I don't think anyone's particularly nervous about it. I think there's never really been a solution. I don't feel I don't know whether this is a benefit excuse me, a benefit or not, but because I'm an unknown person and I'm not I'm not a brand in my own right. If a brand wanting to do this Jog On campaign, there will be a lot of cynics. I think because this is Tony with his garage in West Sussex, there's a little bit more, come on, let's make this happen. So I think if anyone is in the right position to do it, we are, because like I said, we're quite neutral in our approach. But it is a lot to ask, one person to achieve those big numbers. But if we can get on our way there, there's going to be some support along the road.
And so for people listening at home, if they've got a shed full of shoes, what's the best way for them to get them to your garage then? So
go onto the site, JogOnAgain.com, and there's a postage tab. And in there, you'll see the every button. Press on it, you'll get a QR code. Just box them up, print that label, put it in, put it on the box, and take it to a drop-off point. And they'll find its way to me within sort of 48 hours or so. The only thing I would ask, a couple of things of them: put a note in the box and tell me who they are so that I can say thank you. I get so many pairs, and I just I get occasionally, you've probably seen on our social media channels, a lovely little note to say, these shoes have served me well for hundreds of miles. Look after, hope they find new feet. There's a lovely person.
Runners still boasting, even when they're not there. unbelievable. Like, it just can't leave it, can they?
They can't leave it. No. But it's great, you know. Those are, you know, for some people, they've carried them. They've been transformational for them, and it's lovely to have that connection with why people are donating. So, you know, if you're going to send us some shoes, just tell us who you are, give us your email address, and I'll say thank you.
And do you think you'll come into any criticism that you're almost creating an infrastructure that's finding what appears to be a solution to the problem from a Western perspective, but doesn't change the fact that you're actually just moving away the shoes from the West, and they're still going to be in landfill for 1,000 years after they've had their second life? Like, is that a concern for you, or?
Yeah, there is. You know, of course, and look, I come to it from a let's make a small step, incremental change rather than find the ultimate solution, because none of us have the answer for what the ultimate solution is. Right now, the easy thing is to say, actually, I feel pretty good because 97% of the pairs of shoes that come through here are not going to landfill this week, right? So if that means that we stave off that sort of bell curve for another 3, 4, 5 years, actually, I'm okay with that. That buys us time to find a solution. What I am absolutely sure, though, is that those that are end of life don't leave these shores, right? We terminate them here. And actually, I did mention this point earlier, and I was going to come back to it. If I may, I'll just tell you what I'm going to do with them. So when I first started this, I thought I'm going to end up with loads of shoes in there that are just smelling rotten and, you know, end of life. What we're going to do? And I said, we're going to shred them, right? And I couldn't find anywhere in the UK that had a shredder for running shoes. So I've approached a manufacturer based in Kent who actually they shred car tires. And I said, listen, if you can shred a car tire, surely you could make some adaptations to, you know, shred a litsy bitsy shoe. So they were brilliant. They set a machine up for me. I took 100 pairs of shoes and I threw them in it. In 3 seconds, it was shredded to 30 millimeters. Right, it was brilliant. I was so excited. And then there was a realization. There's a bit kind of a so what moment, right? Because so you could, if you've got enough of this stuff, you can put it through a 30 mil machine, 50 grand. You can put it through another machine to 20 mil, another 30 grand. Put it for another machine for 5 mil. Put it through a separator, and then through a magnet machine to take all the metals out, 80 grand. Plus all the electricity and power to do all that process. And you're thinking, actually, the outcome, the end result of this versus the input, the energy input, surely doesn't add up either, right?
Can the rubber or the materials be used in any other way?
So I'm sure they can. So, you know, I started off thinking, okay, well, maybe I can get this shredded to a point where they can go into playground resurfacing and all this kind of stuff. And to a degree, I think they can, but it will be because the volumes are so low and it's 3%, I'm going to need a lot of shoes to make that happen. And there's a lot of time, energy, and investment. So at the moment, the numbers here don't stack up for the investment. So there is a process, a well-documented process called waste to energy plants. So effectively, they go and get incinerated, they'll burn, they'll create electricity, and what they call the drop ash, which is all the ash after that process, it goes off to be tarmac. So two positive outputs: A, there's power, and B, there's a sort of, you know, going to fill potholes somewhere. And I know, I mean, I you know, talking to green runners and others, that actually the marginal benefit versus landfill, it's tiny. But the clue is in marginal. It is marginal, but it is better than filling, you know, acres and acres of holes in the ground. And it's a damn sight quicker. And also, I think these power plants now are really, the way that they're structured in terms of their filtration systems, they're really, really good. I mean, Sweden, a very good case study in Sweden, where they net import rubbish to use in their power stations, because they are so well organized in doing it. So that's the plan. Now, it is easy to say, but it has been very difficult to get one of these power companies to agree to do that directly with us. Mainly because our volumes are low. They want 6 containers, 250, kilos or whatever it is, at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, delivery every week, because they need to keep these furnaces burning. Well, actually, I'm not there yet, but can we start small? And those conversations are difficult. I haven't yet got a contract to make that happen.
Interesting, and I guess that's the challenge, is getting to that stage without the space to store that many, to then even give yourself a bit of a leeway.
Yeah, and look, because it's so small, it isn't a big problem right now. I think we're close to finding a partner and a solution, and I think when that happens, I'll be really happy with the full circle. Right, we've got shoes going off somewhere else now. If we can grow this to a point where there's higher numbers, bigger volumes, good relationships, there is no reason why we can't be a net importer of old running shoes from anywhere in the world to take care of them. Now, I would love, if there's a problem in Africa, if there's a problem in South America, in hotspots, let's take these shredding machines there, or let's take these waste to energy relationships and go and do something about it there, because we're not the only ones that have them. So there are solutions. I'm probably not the one to find them all, but I don't think we ought to be scared of doing what we can do in the short term.
Amazing. Well, I mean, it sounds just like such a great initiative, and I wasn't sure if it would be, actually, when I just Googled and thought, let's get Tony on. See, I was skeptical, thinking it's probably some whitewashing for a brand or something, but it's great to hear that it's genuinely just
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
We're prepared to be furious. We're not.
And oh, sorry, go ahead, Teddy.
I was going to say, look, there's no secret sauce in any of this, other than a bit of hard graft and having some great supporters. And thank you for shining a light on it and having an opportunity to talk about it. It's quite a nice, almost counselling session, being able to talk to you guys about it, out loud. And I'm actually sharing the stage with Damo at the running show in next year.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
We're on a panel together. So I've not met him before. I'm so looking forward to it.
He's a lovely man. Yeah, you'll have a great time. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And if there's anything we can do to help in the future, or if you need a connection to the running charity, I'm sure they absolutely love to get trainers. Alex Eagle's been on the podcast. He's a great guy. If you need a connection to Skid Row running group for the homeless in LA, then let us know, because we're more than happy to put you in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you both.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Teddy. What a joyful man, and a wonderful. It's great just to hear that things like this are happening.
And it's working. And I mean, I love the thing about Jogging Buddy, that it survived through all of those other things popping up, and all those other things have kind of died for whatever reason, because they've either like overreached or tried to expand too fast or tried to monetize and lost the trust and things like that. And he's just kind of just got on with it and just kept going with it, kept with the audience, kept building stuff, and it kind of working. And I don't know, I think that kind of thing then kind of allows you to have a more long-term view about other things that you do. And I think with something like that, and not wanting to scale it quickly, like to have that urgency of like going, oh my God, we're going to do this now, and have all those problems that go with it. You're absolutely right. It's just, it's someone that's doing something on, one person doing something that's changing the world.
Yeah. And I mean, it amazes me as well that people are sending it, that 97% of the trainers.
He has made a huge mistake, though, by living in West Sussex.
Oh, it's a complete shithole.
What he needs to do, he needs to live somewhere where getting a warehouse is much lower cost. You are talking about like prime real estate in the country, in that part of the world. But But yeah, I mean, I'm sure it would. It's really interesting because I think at some point, I think you were kind of like tickling around the edges of this. At some point, it's gonna all of a sudden like retail and brands are gonna not like this anymore. Because these things are being recycled, and because and it does mean depressing demand. And if it's not depressing demand in this country, it's certainly depressing demand in developing countries and other markets as well. So there's going to come to a point where it's going to become a problem to those brands. And so what happens at that point?
Hopefully it gets large enough at that stage that the brands are no longer need to be linked or involved in any way. And actually, if it becomes that big, Tony becomes in a good position to be able to turn around to brands and start demanding things and start, actually pushing back. Big Tony,
that's it. It's good.
Hey, you want pie in your face? Come on, Big Tony.
I'm the pie daddy. You're not.
Come get a piece of this.
He's probably had that recycle these shoes. There's nothing you can do about it, Nike. Take me to Oregon, butter me up, do what you will, but I'm never coming over to your side.
You had your chance. You didn't even offer.
You wined me, dime me, and you just left me. And you're never gonna have it. You're never gonna get this good again.
But I love the idea of both of them actually. And do about this. Who's used Run Buddy before? Because I don't think I'd use it at home just because I run commute for most of my runs, or I'm with the missus, or I want to train hard by myself. But certainly when I travel, it's partly why I love the Hash House Harriers, because you can go somewhere completely new, find people who are locals who actually explore and make a buddy. But this is better because, as he says, you're not then constrained to a certain time or a certain place. Well, if you like this episode...
Sorry, were you expecting an insight from me there?
Yeah, I was thinking, I can't wait to do this. I don't want to run around the street, every street in...
No, I don't want to run with anyone at any point, ever. No, I don't. I do. Yeah, I'll happily. The only time I want to run is if we're drinking at the same time, and I don't know if that is an option that you can tick.
I reckon you could put it on there. Yeah,
it'd be good, wouldn't it?
I think you'd be surprised. I mean, there's so many run clubs and breweries now. I think it's far more common. Trying to think of other episodes that would be good to listen to if you like this one. I mean, the Alex Eagle one. It's a double Alex Eagle and Skid Row Marathon actually, where we talk to the running charity, who are an incredible charity, who help refugee and homeless people in London to rehabilitate their lives really through the power of running. And have we done any others? Oh, we interviewed the product designer for the Nike Vaporfly. That's maybe on the other end of the spectrum. Can't remember his name. Was it Ryan?
You would not believe the amount of resource and water that goes into creating every single one of these.
Yeah, the Nike Vaporfly now with more water.
Now with more, the entire rainforests have been felled to make way for the water that we'll need for these shoes.
But we did an episode of Wiggle all about kits. That's probably the closest thing. We've not really talked that much about trainers explicitly, but I guess it's because there's
no. I think talking about the Vaporfly came about because we hadn't been talking about trainers, wasn't it? That was why it came about.
Yeah, because we wanted to understand what the pressures
we haven't
were.
really talked much about it, or the brands have tried to close it down and shut us up. Because
Big Tony won't let it.
Big Tony never. He doesn't care about the big brands.
Although he was clearly quite cautious not to slag any brands off. He's clearly at the stage of don't want to make any enemies here. Clever. We didn't learn that lesson. We started off by going. We started off making enemies. The moment. And it's never changed. That's why we have no sponsors. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We're going to be back next week as ever. If there's any guests or subjects or topics or anything you'd like to discuss, then message me, david@badboyrunning.com, or Instagram or letters at badboyrunning.com. Get your shoes into Tony. And you got any merch for us, Jody?
We've got some merch. Go to the running show and buy your merch, so we don't have to send it out over Christmas, because it's going to get lost, isn't it? I mean, like with all the postal strikes and stuff, don't even think about buying merch for birthday. What's it called? Christmas presents and stuff like that. Bad idea. Get me a gift voucher, nice gift voucher or something.
Good
but for after
reverse
Christmas.
psychology. And if you're going to leave us a review, please do. The magic word has got to be, well, it's more style. You've got to do the review in the style of an Al Capone threatening review.
Big Tony.
Big Tony.
Big Tony.
It's not very big, by the way. He's perfectly in wonderful shape. But we've got
Little Tony. It's even more menacing. It's Little Tony.
Well, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Fuck you, buddy.